I think
What's up,
is he
Coach?
on?
Yeah, I'm on. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Derek, hey buddy,
Hey, guys.
we may want to talk to you more than Coach Alston.
Amen.
Amen.
How you doing?
All is good, guys. I'm doing great. I'm doing really good. Thanks for everybody's prayers and support and reach out throughout my process. So I can't thank you guys enough. The MES community has come out in very strong support. So thank y'all very much.
That's great. That's great. Well, I haven't seen Pete. I haven't seen if Will Thompson is on. Can you tell?
Will's on.
I think. Okay.
And
I
we're
think
up
a
to
lot of
71 people right now.
What's that, Pete?
We're up to 71 people. So people are
Okay.
starting to log on.
All right, we're going to give it just a couple of minutes, and then I'll start it up, and then I know there's some fellows in Oxford watching, and probably all over the country. Coach, I'm just glad we don't have film study after this one. I wouldn't do so well. Coach Ray would know that as well.
Burnett, you were a gem to get to coach.
Just had, as long as I had a McCarroll near me, I looked better.
I would say a lot of people had looked better with that.
Great.
We could do it like the Tupelo replay where y'all played it and said nothing.
Well, that's true. That's an all-time great film session right there.
Geez, my guys, that was a memory. We knew it was trouble in conditioning after that.
We were only out there about 45 minutes running. It wasn't too bad.
That's wonderful. Well, okay, Pete, looks like we got north of 80 and a few more piling on right here. So hang on, I'm getting some texts. Richard Davis, hi buddy. Okay, so why don't I start it, and then we're going to get the main guy here ready to go. Pete, is Jeffrey Wright on, or Jeffrey, are you on?
I am indeed. It's great to be
He's
here.
there.
Awesome. There's the other man of the hour. So first of all, let me welcome everybody here. Whether you can see or hear me, probably neither is great, but I am Jim Burnett, and I have the honor of serving as chairman of the board right now. And arguably, not even arguably, a much better honor of having played for Bobby Alston and Jake Rudolph for that matter. But as we all know, we've all got some blood, sweat, and tears invested in this Zoom call. And I told Coach Alston when he called me a while back that said this is going to be it for him. I told him I have been dreading that phone call ever since becoming chairman, knowing that it was probably at some point down the road coming my way. So having said that, this is the first time, I think, in 63 years that we will have hired a football coach at MUS. And that is arguably something no other high school in the country has probably had to do, or very few, I would think. And so Will Thompson and Mr. Sanders can speak to that in a little bit as far as our process and the people involved. Ultimately, the full weight of the history of the school falls on Mr. Sanders' shoulders with his hire, but he's going to have a lot of people standing beside him to give him some help and support. But for right now, and I'll tell you this on the front end, and Will can say it as well, this is tough to have a full open conversation because there's so many people on the call, and I'm looking at my screen more and more coming on every minute. But by and large, everyone has a vested interest in what we're talking about tonight. But most importantly, we want to hear from Coach Alston. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey Wright, who is the voice of the Owls, if you don't know that, and a former fine 7th grade football player in his own right. And I will let him speak a moment, and then it's really Coach Alston's time to talk to you guys. And then, Coach, if you want to stay on, you're more than welcome to. As we talk, we're going to have some more conversation at the end, as I said, about the process. So, guys, thank y'all for being a part of this. This is really meaningful and a special time in our school's history, not just the sport, but in the school's history. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another legend that's on this screen. That's Barry Ray, who to many of you is Mr. Ray. I never, ever could call him Mr. Ray. He will forever be Coach Ray to me. He will be retiring at the end of the school year. So we've literally got two legends of MUS on this call that have touched the lives of literally thousands of boys. And so we are in your debt beyond what we could repay. But having said that, Jeffrey, why don't I turn it over to you and let you take it from here?
Good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank Will Thompson. I want to thank Jim Burnett. And I want to thank Pete Sanders for this opportunity to MC this event. It's truly an honor, and I'm absolutely humbled to be involved with this in any shape, form, or fashion. To those out there who are watching, you may be asking, who is this guy and why is he hosting this? Don't be ashamed, because the truth is I have the same question. I have no idea why on earth I would be hosting this for a school that has literally billionaires and millionaires, as well as a 5-year NFL punter as alumni. Why is one half of a local sports talk show in the nation's 51st market with a coveted 2 to 4 time slot hosting such a momentous occasion? The truth is I don't have an answer for you. However, even though I don't know why I'm here, I do know why we're all here. And we're all here to honor and to thank Coach Alston. In the days since the retirement announcement, I've been struck by the shared experiences we've all had from Coach, regardless of what years we played. I found that many of us have a deep appreciation for this man, even if we didn't recognize it during real time. We all have a similar relationship, I think, that a lot of us do with our own fathers, where we realize when we think back on some of the things that he did, it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly why he did this. One such lesson that I learned from Coach was, don't be too liberal with the attaboys. The more you limit the attaboys, the more special they are. And Coach was never afraid to limit the attaboys. Reverend on the call, think about it. Almost everyone on this Zoom can timestamp the exact moment that they got their first attaboy from Coach. Mine was so special that it didn't even happen to me. It happened to my brother, as did most of the big events at MUS. They usually happen to my brother. During my senior year, my brother's junior year, it was the dog days of preseason camp. And everyone knows in preseason camp, the defense wins early. And this was one of those particular days where the defense was winning and winning big. And it was my brother's turn to get in with the offense and run the show. And I am nearly certain he didn't run whatever play was called. He literally just went and attacked the first outside linebacker that he saw just to try to run him over. And none of us had any reaction of what Coach would say, what Coach would do, until we got to the film sessions that have been mentioned, the legendary film sessions with Coach Alston that you'd have during camp right after practice. Coach watches the play, watches the play, watches the play. And in the Wonderlick where the offense was, you could hear just a pin drop. No one knew what Coach was going to say, because the truth is we might have gotten a little too excited afterwards, but Coach just turned around and said, "Where's Blair?" And then Blair sheepishly raises his hand like this, and he just looked at him and said, "Good job." And the entire room erupted. And to me, those are kind of the moments. It's when Coach would tell you good job, because it was so few and far between. They always stuck and resonated with you. Another important lesson that I learned from Coach is knowing the importance of the pulse of a team. And I think back to my sophomore year, the 2004 season, and for the first time ever, we were playing Brentwood Academy on homecoming. And Coach never really won at the homecoming pep rally to give the rah-rah speech. Sometimes knew when it was time to give your team a kind of kick in the pants. And he got up on the stage and he in Coach Alston fashion, delivered the most Coach Alston line of all time. They always say schedule someone you're supposed to beat on homecoming. I scheduled Brentwood, and it was the ultimate mic drop. The room went nuts. And of course, that was one of the best wins that I can remember, at least in my high school career. Another important lesson that I learned from Coach, and it's one thing that I think that he did better than any other coach that I've ever played for. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. Coach was one of the all-time best at instilling the importance of the team. He was at his best when he convinced everyone that it did not matter about individual accolades. Those would come. But what mattered was the better the team was, the better we all were going to be. And it's, I think, the lasting testament to Coach, because when I think back on the years I played high school football, and honestly, I think back on the years that I've been calling the games, I don't really remember great individual performances. I remember awesome team wins. And I remember the feeling of everyone sharing in those wins. And it's a testament to the culture that he would always build with the team. Because Coach never cared who got the credit. He never cared whether or not he got the credit. Because I think back to one of the key plays that was shown on this awesome video that ran right before we got going. It was the 2005 state championship game. And I don't know if this story's ever been told. I know it probably hasn't been told by Coach, but since he can't get mad at me anymore, I'm going to tell it. Right before the game-winning play, we call timeout. And we had a play called, and Coach brought everybody over. And this is a man that never overruled Coach Massey. It was Coach Massey coached the offense. Coach handled the clock. And he said, I want to slant flat. And even though it wasn't some groundbreaking concept, it was a play we didn't have in our playbook. And we literally ran it that night. And Michael brilliantly got the pass tipped so that Prokel could make an even better catch for the game-winning touchdown. And that was a moment that I'll never forget, because Coach didn't care. It was never about, he wasn't looking for the first reporter to go say, I called that play. And I also think back about another moment of humility throughout that entire run. In the semifinal game on offense, we're not really doing very much. We're clinging to a 3-point lead, and we're inside of plus territory, and Coach is going to call for a punt. And then I just hear Coach Burr yelling, oh, hell, Bobby, go for it. It's only going to be at 20 yards. Go for it. We call timeout. We go for it. We end the game. And those are the little moments that I think about with Coach Alston when I think about what he means to me. And it's having the humility to never make it about yourself, as we could hear in the speeches. Never made a tackle, never made a play. It was never about that with Coach. In the end, it was all about making the team as strong as possible, and we were always stronger together. And that's the biggest lasting lesson I feel like I'll always know from Coach. My final emotion is just deep, deep gratitude. Whether it was creating the Owl Walk, whether it was making sure our facilities were always great, we always had the best equipment. One thing that I always thought about with Coach is Coach always made it special and made it feel special to be a part of the MUS football program, no matter how big or how small of a role that you may or may not have had. I'm forever grateful to be a small part of it. And more importantly, I'm forever grateful that I played for this man. So, Coach, I now kind of hand it over to you. These are I know we had a canned statement from the official release, but I think my first question is, what has it meant to you to be the MUS football coach?
Well, Jeffrey, I have another canned statement. I'll read it. Let me read this. And this, after we get through this part, can we forget about all this junky stuff and just have some fun and tell some funny stories? Because we've had our share of funny stories, from me getting pants by Wesley Grace to other things like that. But let me say this real quick, and because I need to say some thank yous. To say I've been a blessed man would be one of the all-time understatements. It's been my honor to have served MUS for my entire professional career. That says way more about MUS and what it produces than any talents I brought to the table. The opportunity to learn the coaching trade from Coach Rudolph and Coach Peters were priceless. The leadership I've served under Colonel Lynn, Mr. Thorne, Mr. Hagewood, Mr. Sanders, and the board of trustees they served has provided an umbrella that allowed me to weather the storms and find the sunshine. Camaraderie of coaches who have had the privilege to work alongside, whether it was Coach Ray or Coach Katie or Eddie Beatty in track in the early years, and then Coach Massey and Coach Burr and Coach Harrison, who came in. And then the most recent core group that I've been able to work with, Coach Chubb, Coach Rogers, Coach Finney, Coach McKay, Coach Eggers, Coach Ellis, Coach Jones, Coach White in football, and then Coach Tyler and Coach McKay in track. And I've always had Coach Torrey there to help be kind of my historian, help me keep up with that kind of stuff. And then later on, when Mr. Haywood realized that I was over my head administratively, and he helped get Angela Counts, and then to serve as one of the assistants. And then after Angela left, we found Beth Taylor, God bless her, had 2 5-star office helpers, unbelievable. And then through the good and the bad, I've been able to celebrate this alongside my best friend. She put up with the craziness I brought home each day. I am really looking forward to spending time together with her, serving with her without interruption or until I mess things up so bad she sends me to my room. Thank you, Sally. You are the true love of my life. But the real stars have been the young guys who trusted me with their dreams and ambitions. You believed in the 4 cornerstones we built this on: teamwork, sacrifice, discipline, and the courageous pursuit of excellence. Sure, sometimes I occasionally got it right, but so often my mistakes were covered up by you guys making a great play. Those are the plays that I still recall most fondly. A Jay Steed soaring over the pile to make a game-saving tackle, or Deion Stutz making another quarterback sack, to name 2 guys who died way too early. The players are the heart and soul of our team, and that's why I'm very confident that the next coach will continue to raise the standard here at 6191 Park. And that's why we can always sing or say, "Go big team down the field and honor bring to the red and blue." Our team will never yield. Our men forever will be true. Whether we lose or win, a greater team you'll never see. We'll show our might again for Memphis University, ready to fight again for MUS and victory. Thank you guys very much. Thank those who came on here to watch tonight or share stories. But let's don't have any more sad stuff. I really need some of you to be Don Rickles and remind us of when I did something stupid so we can all laugh about it. Those are the fun parts about it, or maybe even share a story that I don't know about and probably shouldn't have known about. That would be funny. Thank you. You're too old to get in trouble now. No more Saturday schools.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. We later found out, even when we thought you didn't know things, you always knew. you always knew what happened. But I think really kind of the moments where I want to start is, my freshman year, coach, in between Drew and my freshman year and our sophomore year, it was kind of up in the air. And the next year we turn around and win a state title. In your mind, what did you think was kind of the key difference between those 2 seasons? Because one, which may have been the most miserable year to play football, and the next, which was one of the most fun years to play football.
I recall 2 incidences. One, we are finishing the season, y'all's freshman year at Macaulay, and they were supposed to beat our brains out. And the game, we get to the second half, it's not going very good. And then we start putting some younger guys in there because it's not going well. And it was just incredible, the fight that group showed. And I was kind of taken aback by it a little bit. And then we made a few X and O changes, one of which was me telling the coaches we're going to not play anybody 2 ways. And I gave the defensive guys the first 13 picks or something like that. And Coach Harrison running into my office saying, "What have you done? These are the guys you're leaving me to block." And, but it was just players making plays and a group of guys who came together under that MUS banner and wanted to do something special. You're right. It was definitely on up in the air about it. And you know, for those of you who played for me as the head coach, compared to those of you who played for me as assistant coach, statistics would prove I was a much better assistant coach. We won 78% of the games and I was assistant coach. Only 70% as the head coach. So I probably should have fired myself and gone back to being an assistant. That would have been the smart thing to do as athletic director.
You mentioned Coach Harrison because obviously he's another one that's not with us, but anyone that was had any experience with him is, you know, grateful for those moments. If you want a funny story, I will never forget Will Aldridge, who's one of my best friends. We were playing Baylor, and Baylor had Big Jock McClendon, who went on to Tennessee. I think forever he held the squatting record in the weight room at Tennessee. And we're watching the film back, and Coach Harrison just was so pleased with Will's fire off. Just, that's a great job, Will. That's a great job. And we then got to like the third step of the play, and Big Jock just threw Will, who weighed 305 pounds, just like he was a rag doll. It was still a great fire off as the play just kept going. And, you know, Coach Harrison's another guy that I think about. All those, you know, I miss him dearly because, man, there was nothing better than seeing Coach Harrison, eating breakfast with Coach Harrison in the morning. And, you know, man, did he love his Rebels. And that was a time in which I loved the Rebels too. So it was always good to be with Coach. But I think let's bring on, you know, a few of the other guys. Actually, Coach Ray, I don't know if you knew you were going to talk, but as soon as I saw you were on here, I'm not gonna allow you to not talk here because you know, this is one of your best friends, and y'all been through the wars together. When you think back to what Coach Alston's career has meant, how would you even attempt to summarize it?
Well, the one thing that I would say about Coach Alston is that he exemplifies the mission of the school, the community creed. No one hates to lose more than he hates to lose. And he hates to lose more than he wants to win. But he always wanted it to be done according to the values of the school. And he's a whole lot smarter than he acts. And not everybody knows just how bright he is. And he is truly one of the all-time best that I've ever been around. He's better than any of the coaches I had when I was in high school and or college. He cares about the players. You don't always maybe see it because Coach Alston's pretty stoic about most things, but I know his heart, and it was a true pleasure to be able to coach with him. And then when I went into administration, he allowed me in various ways to be a hanger on to the program, first as a spotter for the coaches, and then these last several years where I've been a part of the radio and video broadcast with you, Jeffrey. And this is a momentous turn of events. The job to replace him is going to be huge for whoever is chosen to do that. He would tell you that it's no big deal. They'll come in, they'll do as good or better job than he did. I don't know that that's possible from my perspective. I'm a little biased because he and I worked together for a long time, and I know just what kind of coach he is. But it's we've had a lot of good times. I've seen him close mouthed and grimaced at the end of a game where we lost. I'll never forget walking off a field at ECS where we lost a game we shouldn't have lost. And I don't think a darker cloud has ever descended over an individual than the one that was hanging over him that night. But I've also seen the sun shine where we've won games where we shouldn't have. And we can go to our first state championship game in 19 or the time we won in 85, where we were facing a team in Alston East that may have the best collection of high school athletes I've ever seen. They had 11 guys who were Division I players. And we had, and I'm not going to name them in case they're watching. I don't want to make them feel bad, but we had some guys who probably didn't deserve to be on the field playing that caliber of opponent. But our guys didn't care. And they went out, and that victory over Alston East for our first state title, for Coach Rudolph, for Coach Alston, that was truly something special and something that I will never forget.
Yeah, I mean, those we can spend all the time we want on the state title games because I think that'd be fun. But actually, Coach Alston, I did think of you mentioned the statute of limitations is over. I've got to know this. Drew always claimed that you could make it to go swap game film. You could drive to Nashville and back 90 minutes each way. God's watching, Coach. Is that true?
He's close. Close. I've made a few of those trips back and forth. And I don't know, 9 minutes, not 2 hours. I'll give him 2 hours might be close to the truth, but it's been we could make them down the highway.
When
And
you
also
think back
the guys who used to ride with me on those vans and track would remember that, because Coach Beatty or Coach McKay, whoever was trying to follow me, would start trying to call me and say, what you know how fast you're going? And I would just say, probably not fast enough to get us there on time. Let's go.
we probably you should have just been the all-time driver in the Musts bus, like because I feel like it's impossible to get that bad boy over 75. So probably should have just had you in that at all times. But kind of when you think back to some of these big wins, what are the ones that stand out in your mind?
Well, golly, there I count. I I think a lot of people think the one still probably would say the one at South Panola was the biggest one ever for the school because it was against who it was, and it was on national TV. And I got calls from all over the country. Y'all have heard me say there's, I used to say before we played games that there's 1 billion people in China that don't give a damn how we do. So let's just have fun out there. Then a guy called me from a guy was stationed in China and called and said he was watching the games. So we couldn't say that anymore. But that was a big one. The state championship wins were big. Some of the games that got us to state championship games, there were some huge plays in those games. But then I think the biggest game for a team is, everybody's got a game that they played in that they remember as being the big win, whether it's beating Christian Brothers or Germantown back in the day, or the occasions we got to beat Brentwood Academy. All of those were super, a lot of fun. Lots and lots of fun, lots of great stories to be told about some of those wins.
The South Panola game, if you want a great story, Coach, of yours truly screwing up. So it was my junior year in college, and we were hosting a watch party for about, I don't know, 30 kids that were all from California, and they couldn't believe that we're watching, Will was with me, that we're watching a high school football game on a Friday night in LA. Jonathan Young, who was at Caltech, drove all the way over from Pasadena. He drove like an hour and a half to come watch the game with us. And truthfully, I don't think any of us thought we'd be watching the game past halftime, but yet lo and behold, here it is. And we're realizing we're going to win. And so about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I broke the golden rule of watching your team. I sprinted to the liquor store to go get some champagne just in the event that we did win. And when the clock struck 0 and we saw everybody dance in the middle of the field, I went around the room and just sprayed everyone with champagne. Everyone hated me that night, but it was, I remember getting yelled at and not caring just because I was so happy. I was so happy for the guys and I was so happy for you. And it was just that's one of those moments where I don't know if guys understand, like, every game's on TV now. You know, you can watch everything. To be playing on ESPNU on Friday night at that point in time, like, that was, the world stopped. And that was such a big deal. And to see us bounce Sal Panola that night, and now my beautiful wife, she's a Sal Panola grad. That game's still bitter for her. So anytime I can bring that up, that we stopped the streak, that always makes me feel good. And I always just think back to ruining no fewer than about 40 people's night that night.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Coach, since we have Andy and Jim on here, I don't know if we have any other legends that age, but we were talking about the 85 state championship game. And as a kid, I remember going to MUS games, especially the Germantown games. And some of you younger guys don't understand the magnitude of what Germantown was, but it was Houston, Cordova, Southwind, Germantown all combined, and probably better than that. If you guys could touch on some of those great games against Coach Nettleton, they still are kind of fantasies in my mind.
Jim, you go first.
Oh, wow. Well, we had, back then it was just, as Will said, we had a common, Germantown was really the school of Shelby County. And they were really good. It was always a good game. I don't know if they overlooked us or we were so scared we played our tails off, but it was always great games and very, very physical. And every referee's misstep, which we felt like were against us, was disagreed with the referee from several fellas in the huddle. And I'll just leave it at that. That's one of those Coach Alston probably didn't know about it at the time and doesn't need to know about it even now. That was some of the disputes that went on in the huddle, but with the referees. But Coach Ray and Coach Alston both, one of the great things that it was started with Coach Rudolph was, as many people on this film can tell you, was film preparation. And we were as prepared as any team I can ever imagine being there. If we knew we were maybe outgunned physically, but the ability to know what we were supposed to do certainly benefited us, even if we physically couldn't do it. But we were there a lot. Coach Ray and Coach Alston can attribute to a bunch of average athletes like me being coached up, I'd say.
Well, we'll talk about Germantown, but I want to say it's a privilege just to be among the guys on this call. And I've talked to a lot of my friends, and I just want to share the sentiments of all of us. First, a personal thank you, because, and I will tell that to Coach Ray, and if Coach Rudolph were here, I would love to tell him, because that was the era that I played in. But as much as football training was helpful and led to some success in football, I would say that I am more prepared in life, and that's the whole mission of the school. And the ability to show up every day like you did, and we followed you. There was not a place or a time where you asked us to come to 7 o'clock throw around. You were there. Your painting the lines on the field, countless hours of film. You showed us what it meant to apply yourself. And we didn't have to have rah-rah speeches because we knew we had put the work in. Coach Rudolph used to call it the hay is in the barn. And no, we weren't going to be the biggest guys out there, but we were going to know we were prepared. We were going to do the best we could. And we didn't have to worry about it because that was going to be the case. And if you can figure that out, you can go through, you can play Austin East. If your business is putting you in a situation that's tough, you're not going to let it overwhelm you because you know you can do what you can do. And you guys gave us that. And that's been a tremendous gift. And so on my behalf and on behalf of everyone, thank you. Secondly, I'd like to thank you for what you did in football. And I hear about watching film after practice, Jeffrey. Burnett, I guess, when my brother Mac was in Jim's class, they started in 77. That was Coach Alston's first year. And we made a lot of progress from that point in time to today. I don't, film, it was the can. And I think when they did the handoff, I went with Coach Katie to hand off some game film in cans in a team we were playing in Jackson. And Coach Katie, it's like wrestling. It was the biggest poor mouth. We knew we were going to kill him. He told him, we're all beat up. We got no chance against you. And it was just a classic old school meet at a, just a restaurant or gas station and hand off the film and have a little pregame intel from the other side. But from there, we were running the wishbone. Then we went to the I formation. Then we went to, and it's progressed. I would love to hear Coach Alston talk about from the wishbone to today. I mean, we used to say go north and south. All you do is throw the ball sideways now. So I'd like to hear how you got there, because you certainly, the point I would make is he stayed on the cutting edge of that, which gave us a fighting chance every time.
Well, they changed the rules for the wishbone, and we couldn't block below the waist out of the backfield. And our 165-pound halfbacks were at a disadvantage having to block the big guys up at defensive end up high. So we tried it kind of for a year after they changed the rule, and we just, it was a struggle. And Coach Rudolph let me do some studying around, talk to some other coaches, and steal some thoughts from people. And then we had, had some kids that could throw it and catch it a little bit, and that kind of opened things up. But really was just picking, nothing that I came up with on my own, more than just watching the game, watching what hurt us, what did we have trouble stopping, and then looking at what we thought our guys could do to give us a chance to be successful, and hopefully getting the pieces of the puzzle in the right spot. And the guys adapted to it, and we had some good runs there.
Coach Alston, this is Coach Ray. I want to know if you can explain to these guys polecat up the middle.
So yeah, that one book that probably impacted me more than anything was a guy wrote a book about his development of run and shoot offense. And he started that, he was a high school coach in Ohio, and he put it in. He had 4 or 5 plays like Mudcat up the river, and popcorn trap, and wagon train east and west, and receivers running routes that went to heaven, hell, or Boston. And it's a great book if you can find it, if you want to learn about really what football has become. And the greatest part about the story was this guy, he develops that system in high school, and they become very successful and win a state championship. And he advances from that high school, and he becomes a assistant coach for Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And it no longer was developed after that, until a guy out in Oregon found out about it and brought it up into the college ranks, a guy named Mouse Davis. And then it took the college world and even into the NFL by storm.
That is, of course, the precursor for the air raid, because I believe Hal Mummy and Mike Leach took it from Mouse. But
Yep.
kind of the other thing that I was thinking about, Richard Moore, I'm not sure if Richard's on the call, but Richard and I were playing golf in Oregon 2 summers ago. And Richard was playing better golf than I was. I was trying to think of anything other than playing golf. And Richard and I are walking up the 10th fairway, and I just go to Richard, do you ever find yourself thinking about how we used to call plays in high school, because I just loved how our number system was. You know, you had the formation. The first number would tell you whether or not it was a run, pass, trick play. The second told you the blocking scheme, and then the third number was what the actual play was. And Richard was like, "Oh, I did it all the time." And actually, it got me once, because when Richard can tell the story, he was at North Carolina, and honestly, the day that I found out that Coach had flipped evens back to the right and odds to the left, I had to call into question character. I didn't even know what he was. That
You're
was
saying it.
that was always our thing.
You're saying it right. Like the year, it's like trying to unlearn how to ride a bicycle when your evens and odds are flipped. And there were many ass chewing in college for bolting in the wrong direction, because I was thinking of like 111 and 110 start to the right but go back to the left. And so Coach, you did flip that later. And I was one of those players that couldn't I was part of the era where we just ran the ball a lot because we couldn't throw it. And so knowing which way is right and which way is left was super important. But
we could have thrown it, but we had to put you at receiver, and then we didn't have anybody else that could throw it because you were the only one that could catch it.
Well, the Jeffrey, that's a good memory. I hadn't thought about that since then. This was hit on, Coach, and I think about the preparedness and just the critical preparedness that you always had us ready to play the opponent. And I remember specifically we were playing Pearl Cone, a game we lost in the playoffs, and you had their kind of red zone offensive play set completely mapped out. And they ran the 3 plays that we had prepped all week, and they scored multiple times on it. And I come over to the sideline, and you're like, we practiced that. And I was like, yeah, but he's a lot bigger than I am, and I can't get around him. And but I appreciated your patience with us. It was talked about earlier, your attaboys and your continued encouragement to stay in the fight and keep going. It's something that Andy, you said it, and I'll hush up after this, but the way that MUS has developed on this cutting edge level of where, it was, I'm sure some Germantown games were wishbone versus wishbone at some point. But this growth of cutting edge football to platooning offense and defense to now, I mean, forget the plays being run in and we're having a conversation on the sideline. Everything's wristband now, and because you can save time. It's really impressive to see that MUS has changed so much over the decades, but it's still this quality team that on any given night, you're going to play tough, you're going to play fast, and you're going to be a quality team that if you get beat, it's a really, really big win for anybody else. And to have that kind of target over 40 plus years is just amazing. So thank you for all that you've done for us. It's awesome to see and awesome to be a part of MUS and witness it.
Hey, Jeffrey, I know we got a few guys that are going to speak, but I wanted to add one thing when you're talking about, Richard was just talking about the cutting edge of analytics. And I know Coach Alston does not want some soapy, sad stories, so I'm not going to give one here. I'm going to give a reality story. In the 9th grade, Coach Rudolph thought so much of us that when there was a threat of rain on Thursday, he wouldn't let us play our Thursday night games. We would play on Saturday mornings. So our first game was against Memphis Prep, which no longer exists, on a Saturday morning. It was 100 degrees and humid. Coach Alston was our 9th grade coach. And the game was essentially just a shootout. It was played between the 40s, and it was 0-0. And we finally kicked one, fumbled it, and did something to get closer to the end zone. And the play came in. We probably had 2 or 3 first downs the whole game. Prep probably did too. And the play came in from our play caller. Some of my classmates are on this call. Alan Field brought it in. He probably didn't quite make it to the finish line with us, but he calls the play and he said it's whatever. It's essentially to Mac McCarroll, Andy's older brother, who's one of my good friends. I hope Mac's on the call. He said, Coach Alston says to run, essentially pro right 28 sweep. Everybody knew it. And he said, Mac, Coach Alston says, if you don't score, he's going to kick your ass. And you could sum up Bobby Alston's whole coaching with that. That usually got the job done. And to no surprise, Mac carried about 10 prep defenders on his back and scored out of fear of Coach Alston. So I'll leave it at that. That's as warm and fuzzy as coach would want to get.
I would argue not fear. It's coach. It was always a healthy respect. It was a healthy respect of disappointing you.
Yes.
I believe we do have Derek Clinton on the call. Derek, you there, buddy?
I'm here, guys. Hey.
Derek, first off, it's great. It's great to have you just here with us. But, I don't know if you could see the video they were showing beforehand, but Derek was a senior when I was an 8th grader. And I'm not sure it was really possible to be cooler than Derek Clinton was, at least to an 8th grader. How many times, Derek, have you told the story of blocking the extra point against Christian Brothers? Because I got to think, if I were in that case, it'd be no fewer than like 6,000. Because I'm asking you because I'm going to make you tell it again, because I would literally, like, every time I met someone, I'd be like, hey, did you hear about this extra point I blocked?
Yeah, it's definitely been told around many coffee tables with some beverages in hand. Obviously a great game, a memorable game. It was definitely a team win, though. There was no one play that dictated the outcome of that game. It was a complete team effort, and actually, really 2 games, 2 separate games. We jumped out on them early in the first half. And then they fought back hard in the second half, and then, came down to the end of the game. But there were a lot of back and forth throughout that entire game. And, talking about Coach Alston, I think one of the greatest attributes that he had that people have mentioned on this call, but just his calm personality, being a coach and having coached 7th grade football now for 14 years, it's hard to keep your emotions intact. And I think Coach Alston probably did that better than any coach I've ever seen. His ability to just be even keel throughout any game, whether the highs are high or the lows are the lows, it provided his team and his players the ultimate confidence to continue to trust in the process that he had implemented throughout the week. So I think as you look at Coach Alston teams, his demeanor on the sidelines and his ability to keep his emotions intact, even though on the inside, it's churning, right? He's either, but he's keeping it calm throughout. And as you look at a player, you look at your coach and the leader of your team, I appreciated that. And I think every team that that he's coached, you can see that on the field. That MUS is never out of the game. And I think that's a testament to him and his ability to keep his emotions under tact. One of the things that, as I was going through and thinking about all the attributes of Coach Alston, one of the biggest things that came to mind was him just being a servant leader. I was actually reading a quote in one of my devotions this week, and I thought it hit home, and it said, the most significant service is often the service that is unseen. And I think that just touches on how humble he is, how much of a selfless coach he was, always putting the team first. And he never sought the spotlight. He never wanted it. He always turned it back on the players that were playing and his assistant coaches that were coaching alongside him. He always put the best interests of the school, his players, and his coaches at the top of the list. And in this day and age, that's not an easy thing to do. With social media and everything that's out there right now, everybody wants a spotlight. but throughout his 47-year career, he never changed. He was just that consummate servant leader to everyone that he surrounded himself with. And it's going to be really challenging to replace someone like that.
Amen. Amen. Coach, that moment also triggered. Have you ever sent your friend Kevin LaCastro a thank you note for running or for throwing the football when they were running it down our throat and probably going to like beat us in the state championship game in 05? Because that, to me, like that was the greatest moment ever. When I saw John Michael Skinner drop back to pass, I said, "Thank God we have a chance."
Well, you know, you have to thank the boys over on Walnut Grove. They've helped us out a few times. Much to their chagrin.
Jeffrey, that's still the same case in 2003. 2003, they could have run it right down our throats. I think they had 7 or 8 D1 players. And hold on one second.
Well, Derek, so we can have some fun with this. Explain why you blocking the extra point was such a big deal to you.
Well, because one of the best men at my wedding was the quarterback for Christian Brothers and is one of my best friends now. So basically every outing that we have, and he tells it for everybody because when he drinks, he likes to go back to MUS Christian Brothers high school football games. So I haven't told it as much as Carter Giovanetti's told it.
I coached Coach pitch baseball with him 2 years ago, and we played Clinton in the Germantown championship. And before the game, he comes up to me shaking and goes, "I've never beaten Derek Clinton in anything." I was like, thanks for telling me that, Carter. I don't know if Coach McCarroll was. A lot of us have coached and played. I don't remember when. I know Coach McCarroll coached me early and didn't. But when I was there. There were a few games in my mind when I was coaching or playing. In particular, I played. For those who don't, I played in the mid '90s, and we played against Westwood and Whitehaven at the time. They didn't run the ball, and this was a new thing. They were throwing it 40, 50, 60 times when that was unheard of. And you took a bunch of defensive backs and put them on the defensive line to rush and I remember Ted Bailey playing defensive end and schemed against that. And I was the quarterback, and I think we threw it 3 or 4 times that game. And Pat Hickman and Jason Whitmore ran for 300 some odd yards. Kenton Evans threw for almost 500 yards, and we won. And I think when I was coaching with you, and we played Michael Orr, and people probably ask people in that window, "Did you ever play against Michael Orr? How'd y'all do against him?" Well, Coach Alston put this little tough kid named Joey Friend on him, and he submarined his legs every play and turned it into 10-on-10, and we just smoked him. I'm sure there are dozens of games like that where, coaching mattered. And we really appreciate all of those. All of us have stories like that, and we appreciate that. I love if you have any favorites. The Dallin Hayden beat down a couple of years ago was pretty special to the Walnut Grove rivalry as well. Well,
I think Coach Ray talked about us beating Austin East. That was one of the most talented teams we ever played. And another one was when we beat BA when they had Jalen Ramsey and Derek Barnett and a couple other guys that are professional players. And Jordan hit Devin for like 96-yard touchdown pass, and Ramsey's chasing him and couldn't catch him. That was when we were down. I think we were down 20 at halftime or something like that. And Gary kicked the field goal at the end to win that game, and they went home crying. That was a fun win. Great comeback, great plays, but great players make great plays. I hope guys always had felt the freedom to try something over and above what we coached. Because that's usually how those plays are made.
Let's try to work in some of the younger guys. We got Trey Moore on the call. Trey, when you think about your career and some of the great moments that you've had, what's a story that you like to tell a lot?
Oh, Well, I can kind of just pick up where Coach Alston was just talking about at the Brentwood game. But first off, I just want to say congratulations to Coach Alston just on a great and story-written career. I mean, 47 years for you, that's amazing. So just congratulations to you, and I appreciate everything you did for my teammates and I. But yeah, basically that Brentwood game, like Coach Alston said, we were down 21-0 at half, and that was the semifinal game to go to state, and so it wasn't looking good at all. And a big reason why we were losing was because of ourselves, basically, because we were basically kind of getting into playing Ramsey's game. Ramsey was the same guy he was now, basically. He talks a lot of stuff. So the week leading up to the game, he was basically tweeting a couple of our players like Shane Tucker, Fernando Van Hook, kind of getting in their head. And basically he was just kind of dogging us, basically saying we didn't have the offers he had and whatnot. And so we kind of fed into that game. And so when the whistle blew, I mean, I think maybe like the first or second play, him and Shane or somebody kind of got into it. And so we were more worried about fighting them than actually beating them. And so I vividly remember just at halftime walking up the hill, we were kind of feeling defeated, but it's MUS, so we're always in. It's not over till it's over. So, Coach Alston, he kind of lit in us a little bit just to kind of get us back into saying, hey, we have a game to play, and it's not y'all versus Ramsey or y'all versus Barnett. And so, then he kind of stepped back into his even-keeled self, gave us a great speech, motivated us, and we went back out, and basically second half, we kicked their butt. And like Coach Alston said, that last play is probably one of the plays I remember basically forever in my career. Just Devin Perry burning Jalen Ramsey, probably a future Hall of Fame relief for 97 yards. So, that's probably one of the greatest games I've played in, and one of my better stories at MUS. But I also have another funny story. I remember when we played South Panola for the second time, the year before. I was in 8th grade, so I wasn't able to participate, obviously, on the sideline. But my freshman year, I was fortunate enough to be able to dress out for varsity. And so in this particular situation, I was running back. I ended my career as a linebacker, but I was running back at the time. And so, I mean, we're getting our butt whooped. I mean, they came for vengeance, and they let us have it. And they were kicking our butt the whole game. I remember it was towards the end of the game, and Coach Alston, he's pacing the sideline, just kind of shaking his head. And then he walks by me, he's like, "Hey, you want to go in?" And I was just kind of sitting there looking, and before I could even answer, he saw the look on my face, and he just started chuckling and just kept walking. And so one of the guys looked at me, I think it was Anthony Wall, he looked at me, he was like, what were you going to say? And I was like, I mean, I didn't want none of that smoke. Well, I mean, it's not too much I could do. But yeah, that's one of the funny stories. But I really enjoyed my time at MUS, especially playing for Coach Alston. I played all my 4 years for him, and so just one of the better coaches when it comes to be just staying even keeled all the time, no matter the situation. Even when we were down 21-0, he was more mad at us because we were beating ourselves. But then, he's right back to even keel. It's like, this is what we're going to do to win. And just his attention to detail, I think you can see that in his teams. And, I say that's something that helped me separate myself when I was in college, just Coach Alston's attention to detail and kind of having that in me and learning from him and all the other coaches at MUS. I feel like that separated myself in college and allowed me to get on the field early in my career.
That's the stuff, man. I appreciate you sharing. DeAndre, I didn't even realize DeAndre's on the call. So DeAndre, class of 08, teammate and classmate of my brother Blair. Buddy, first off, it's great to see you. But secondly, when you think about your time at MUS, what all stands out? What comes to mind?
Man, I think really three big moments. 05, kind of just look at the whole season, but really two big games. One, losing the Christian Brothers by 4, last second touchdown. Sorry, Logan, see you on the call. But then to come back in the state championship game and win the game 5-4 on a last second touchdown. I think that was a very big moment for me. And I think coming from that high of that season to the next year, literally was the kickoff classic playing against Melrose. Stokes makes one of the greatest plays on special teams ever, chasing down the receiver, I forget his name. And so I remember in that specific game, I guess historically, I always cramped up like the first, at least 2 or 3 games of the season. It just always happened. But I remember coming down, I think they were about to score, and I remember looking at the tight end and be like, I'm stopping this ball, I don't care what. And so I think they ran a sweep out to the outside, broke through and got a tackle for loss, cramped up, both my hamstrings, sitting up in the air, waving over the coaches to come over to get my hamstring. They get me from off the field. So I think that was coming from that high to the next week. I don't know, and Coach, you got to explain this to me. Whose idea was it to fly to Florida on a Friday morning?
Glad you brought it up, because I had it up on the notes. I hope your biggest regret, Coach, was I'm gonna fly the boys. They're gonna get to school at 3:30 in the morning. We're gonna fly the boys to Jacksonville. I believe half of the defense was getting IVs at halftime, and the only reason why the score wasn't worse is because they had like 2 80-yard touchdowns called back, and their quarterback started cramping because he had ran so much. Michael said he did not realize that the corners for Nice were also characters from the Matrix because they broke on ball so quickly. But and then also about half our cars got broken into that day too. So that was an all-timer.
Like you
that's the kind of stuff.
Derek, you say MUS is never out of a game. No, we're out of that game pretty early.
Kickoff.
But yeah, so
That was I thought the worst part was when I told y'all we'd get back, we'd play, and then we'd go back to the airport and eat. We got back to the airport and it was shut down. I couldn't believe the Jacksonville airport was shut down. There was only one little place open that we could eat food.
I just
So what
remember
happened the next Friday night. You remember?
The next Friday night NBA or
opened this new stadium, Soak Stadium, and we beat NBA.
Oh yeah, yep.
That's where the class of 07 story ends.
07, right?
Nothing else happened the rest of the way.
But yeah, so I think those two, and then finally, of course, the 6 shutouts my senior year. I think those are probably the highlights from my career. So definitely thank you, for being a great leader, a good mentor. And actually, it's funny, the Believe sign that you have right over your right shoulder, I still have that same plaque, like right here, literally in my office right here. So thank you for everything, Coach. I've appreciated everything you've done for me and my family and everybody. So.
I still had no idea AirTran was an airline, and we somehow chartered AirTran. That one was a new one. I had no idea we did that. Let's also continue some of the younger guys. Sellers Shy also on the call. Sellers, starting quarterback, captain, an undefeated regular season team. Nothing happened in the state championship game, buddy. We're not going to bring that up. But I talked a little bit earlier today. I think you're at the airport headed out, but you said you'd had a couple of memories that you wanted to share, Coach. So I yield to you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here, but yes, I am in an airport in Alston, Texas. I board in about 30 minutes, so hopefully I can make that flight. But yeah, so I played from 2016 through 2019 for Coach. And I know we're all macho football players here, but I have a wimpy little track and field story for everybody. But yeah, so my spring of my sophomore year, actually, Coach Alston pulled me to the side. I was after lacrosse practice, actually. And he said, "Hey, I may need a little help in a relay for you." I was like, "Okay, that's fine." A little odd, but whatever. And I was expecting 100, 200, maybe a sprint nonetheless. And then I look on a sheet of paper and it says the 4x400 relay. And for anybody that has run track and field, that is the most brutal race of all time, and nobody wants to run it. And there was a reason why there was a spot open for me. It's because nobody wanted to run it. But coach's vision and confidence in me, allowed me to keep running that race, and I was able to win the state title 2 years in a row, my junior and senior year. And so I thank Coach Alston for that, because there was no shot I was going to run that race on my own will. So I appreciate Coach Alston for that. On another note, in football, I think that same confidence portrayed in me my senior year of playing quarterback. I was a 150, 160-pound kid. I know that was probably tough to put me out there at quarterback. But we were able to have a great season and go to the state championship game. So that didn't happen. So,
Yes,
I appreciate Coach Alston for everything. Right. I appreciate Coach Alston for everything he's done for me, and I definitely would not be anywhere close to where I am now without him.
I think we're getting a little lax on the 90s. So let's bring in Jackson Moore. Jackson, Coach Torrey used to always talk about, there was a run in the 90s where it was just like, all right, you chalk it up, we're 10-0, and then we're just going to go play BA, and whoever ends up winning that game, that's going to be the team to beat in the state. But when you think back to your high school career, what are some of the things that stand out?
Mute.
Let's see.
There we go. First of what stands out is I cannot believe that Coach Alston has been at that school for 47 years and still has that same office. So it's good to see, Coach. I haven't been in there in a while. I sat in there a time or two where I didn't want to be there, but I'd like to go see it present day. Yeah, Coach McCarroll I played linebacker, and he was my coach my junior and senior year. I call him Coach Ray, but Coach Ray had just retired before I came through. I mean, he was at the school, but he was not coaching football. And I think that my class holds a distinction of being the only class who was coached by Coach John Cady for 4 consecutive years. He was our 9th grade coach, and about halfway through the season, we used to practice behind, you young guys don't remember this, behind Stoke Stadium, that big parking lot, but that was just a grass field. The basketball arena and all that wasn't there, and that's where we practiced. And Coach Cady one day was so frustrated with us. Coach Luze was his lone assistant, and he walked off the field and told us that our class would never amount to anything. We like Coach Cady. Anyway, so I played in 1990, 91, and 92, and you're right. We went 10-0, 10-0, and 10-0, and in 90 we beat Brentwood when I was a sophomore at MUS in a really close game, and then my junior year at BA we lost in a close game, and then my senior year we lost in a kind of close game. But we had a really good run. A lot of fun. Keep up with tons of players from that era. I certainly remember no one's talked about the Sunday night films. I thought was, at least in our era, Coach Rudolph was the head coach when I was there, but Coach Rudolph was in his latter years of coaching, and Coach Alston really was, I don't know, I think most of us teammates kind of considered, Coach Alston to be probably the head coach. Coach Rudolph spent a lot of time with Captain Davis, making sure the field was okay. And our fields always looked good. They're always painted well. But we had films on Sunday nights. I remember that our parents came. Did they come before the kids came? I think that's right. That was kind of a fun tradition. I'd get home and my dad would be like, "What'd you think of film?" I don't know, Dad. What'd you think of film? Little known fact to anyone young on this is, I don't know when you stopped doing this, Coach, but you had a really slow whistle for the Alumni Basketball League in the summers. Not only was Coach Alston the head football coach, the athletic director, he also refereed alumni basketball games in the summer, and I did that for a few years. But a lot of fun memories. I don't have a whole lot to add from what everybody said. I mean, if there's one thing that was very consistent with all of our teams is we were prepared. And, you know, if someone had like said, Jackson, what's an adjective for Coach Alston? An adjective I would probably use just, you know, comes to mind is classy. You know, you were a very classy man. And you demanded that of your players. And, you know, maybe we didn't always act classy, but I think more often than not we did. And that was a reflection of, you know, how we were taught. And, played a lot of football, you know, after, you know, played and coached football after that for years, and always tried to kind of take those little nuggets, you know, as I moved on. But thanks a lot, Coach. 47 years. I was 2 years old when you were when you started at MUS. Thanks.
I think we're working on, Coach, I think we got Harrison Williams on the call. We're trying to see if we can bump him up to speaker status, because anytime you got an Olympian on the call, you got to give him some face time. Drew, do we have him? Let's see, I think we are attempting to bump him up.
Can you hear me?
Harrison is on. Hey, how are you, buddy? We're glad to have you.
Hey, I'm good. How are you? Yeah, I'm trying to turn the video on, but it won't turn on. Give me a sec. Oh, well, I'll just leave it like this. Yeah, I texted Coach Alston earlier about this, but yeah, just wanted to say a few words about him. I guess the first story I had would be I had my freshman year of high school. I just joined the track team, and I didn't even know the difference between a 200 or a 400. I was that new to track. And after practice one day, he called me aside and told me that he wanted me to try out the decathlon. That was in a couple weeks at the regional championships, because I think I had kind of gotten pretty good at high jump and hurdles, so he thought I could be good at it. And then so I told him, like, okay, great. What's the decathlon? Because I had no idea what it was. And in that first decathlon, I think that was my first time doing about 6 or 7 of the events of the 10. So I didn't do very well. I think I scored like 4,400 points. But he saw something in me and really encouraged me to run with a club team that trained at MUS that summer. And that's where I really was able to develop as an athlete. And I think that's really one of his best attributes, like it's been mentioned already, is his humility and his willingness to kind of just let the athlete develop on their own. And that's what he did for me. And he kind of pushed me to really work hard and, really helped me develop as an athlete by kind of taking a step back and letting me work with other coaches. But even, I mean, he was even a great coach on his own. Like I remember one time, my senior year, we were out there hurdling, and it was one of the few times he actually was trying to coach me. And I was running up on the hurdle too hard. And he just threw out a suggestion like, oh, well, maybe you should take 7 steps instead of 8 steps the first hurdle. So I did that, switched, and immediately felt better. And then later that year, I think I ran what should have been a state record at the time in the 1-ton hurdles. So, I mean, he was an awesome coach to go along with his incredible humility. And I'm definitely incredibly thankful for that, for everything he did. Because if it wasn't for him seeing that in me early on in my career, I don't know that I would have found the decathlon. And I'm still doing it now. I mean, it's my life's passion. So I really appreciate that, Coach. And then because you said you wanted some funny stories too, I'll throw in one at the end. Like was said earlier, Coach is very calm and collected, but the only time I ever saw him get really, really mad was, I think it was one year I was in high school, and we were on the bus or on the van going to a meet, and someone in the back of the bus pulled down their pants and mooned someone in the car behind us. And that's the maddest I've ever seen Coach Alston. It was, so if you're wondering what it takes to get Coach Alston mad, that'll do it.
Just had to get the attention.
Yeah.
Coach, don't ever let anyone say you didn't have an eye for talent.
Well, you'd have to have been blind not to see that. Go get him in Paris next year.
I will. Hope to see you there.
Will and Jim, I mean, I think that I know we're creeping up here on an hour and 15. As I told Will last week, he was like, "Well, we'll keep it to 45 minutes." I go, "No, we won't." But I do think that everyone has lives, so I think finishing with the mooning story listen. That's at the end of the day, that's what boys' school's all about.
Amen.
Mooning cars that are going past, and then some authority figure getting upset with you. I think when we think back to boys' school, that is indeed what it's all about. So I think I'll turn it back over to y'all, and I believe Pete also has a few things to say because I know you want to explain that y'all want to explain the search process. So that's enough of me. I will shut up now.
The classic Jerry Peters story. They're driving back from Carbondale tournament. I think it was Elmer Stout tells it. And not only did they moon Coach Peters, one of them had a cigar. And Coach Peters didn't say a word. And they get back to the locker room at MUS, and Coach Peters said, "Mr. Stout, was that your smiling face I saw smoking a cigar on the way down the interstate?"
Mr. Stout, was that your smiling face that I saw?
Jim, you want to take it, or I'll hand it over. We're going to talk about the process now and what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah, well, Will, you and Pete can wrap it up. And
first off, thank everyone for doing this. The point of this was to celebrate Coach Alston. We recorded it, and a lot of people that couldn't make it have reached out and said, "Please record this. I want to see this and have some good laughs." So we really appreciate everybody's time. Now the toughest part is what Coach Ray said, the impossible task. So I'll let Pete kind of define what we're doing going forward. And
all right. Well, thank you, Will, and Jeffrey. Thank you for being the MC tonight. And Bobby, it's great hearing those stories. And just hearing y'all speak just tells us how much we have ahead of us in trying to find a new coach. We can't replace Coach Alston, but what we are going to do is to continue the culture that he's helped shape here on the football field that's so much part of the school. Just to get down to the mechanics of it, tomorrow or at the latest Wednesday morning, you'll see on our school website a job posting, and the posting has an abbreviated job description of sorts. There's of course more to it than you can put in bullets, but that's part of the process, and that's very formal. But not all of our candidates will come to us that way. We're already getting phone calls or an email here and there. There's a lot of interest in this position. This is one of the best high school coaching slots in the state, if not the country. Who wouldn't want to come to a boys' school like MUS and coach its football team? So we're looking forward to a strong field. In terms of a timeline, school gets out for Christmas on Wednesday and shuts down. We'll continue to talk to people, but we'll really get going in earnest in January. And at that time, we'll start to vet candidates, talk to them. And as Jim said, the ultimate decision is mine, but I won't be making it alone. I'm going to get some very qualified input from alums and people at the school, parents, all of whom have strong football backgrounds. And that's going to help me tremendously. And I really appreciate them stepping forward. I just want to read off the names of the people who have agreed to help out. It's a big group. We might be breaking down into smaller groups at times, but it's going to be a good process and one in which we're going to have these candidates get a sense. They're going to know what this school's all about by talking to the people. And this committee will be, I'll read them off to you: Jim Burnett, Will Thompson, Derek Clennon, Keith McBride, Bobby Wade, Andy McCarroll, Jackson Moore, Will Stokes, Philip Wunderlich, Jim Barton, Owen Tabor, Jimmy Sexton, Richard Smith, Micah Bubba Ray, DeAndre Jones, Barry Ray, Richard Moore, and Tom Hutton. All of those fellows have really strong credentials. We have also board members there. Jim Barton may not have played football at MUS, but he is the chair of our athletic committee on the board and has been just very closely involved with a lot of our strategic planning, which has touched on athletics. So it's a good group of people. Again, looking at the timeline, it's going to get going in earnest and pick up speed in January. If all goes well, we might be able to we should identify our choice by mid to late January. And that person would come on board as soon as possible because the football team will already be going through practices and working out. And it's important to have that person on board. I'll just say to get to the point, and this is just a distillation of what we've all heard tonight. What we want to do moving forward is we want to be competitive, but true to the mission of the school. In other words, continue what Bobby Alston did on that front, and that is, build men of strong character who want to aspire to greatness on the athletic field and also in the classroom. And that's what we're committed to. The landscape's changing out there, but we do believe that the way MUS goes about its athletics within the academic setting of this beautiful campus and with all the teachers we have, that's the way to go. And that's what we're going to do. Will, Jim, you want to add anything?
No, as we said on the front end, thank you guys for being on. This is really having Coach Alston on is meaningful. Having Coach Ray on is meaningful. And Jeffrey, you did a great job navigating all that. One thing I will say, Will's getting off the hook here because I can't think of his email right off the top of my head, but many of you may have a question. You might have a suggestion. We all, I think, feel like we know. One of the things we're going to talk about is who are we? What are we? What do we want to be? Maybe more importantly, what do we not want to be? I think we all know that. We've just never really written it out and we've never really vetted it. So of that, you're more than welcome to email me. To no shock, I've gotten about 4,000 already, but my email is jim.burnett@raymondjames.com. I'd be happy to get your email and I will pass it along to our committee or to Mr. Sanders. If it's specific to Coach Alston, I'll pass it on to him. So feel free to do that. Will, why don't you chime in and give them yours just so you get me off the hook a little bit?
Mine is wthompson@nfcinvestments.com.
See, that's a lot easier than mine, I think. So anyway, unless anybody has anything else of our group, I wanted to again, thank you all. This is awesome to see so many people on here. Will, you got anything else, Mr. Sanders?
I think that's it. We'll keep you posted.
Great. Thanks everybody for being here.
Okay.
Thank you to Drew for keeping this thing rolling. This was
Yes.
well done, Drew.
Drew,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Drew Highnote.
Great.
Thanks, Coach. See you guys. It's been a fun time.